how we think and how our thoughts impact other children and children in school. And when I take on children, the thing I want to say to them is that you are a future rocket scientist, irrespective of how you come to me. I believe I can teach you to read, and you are brilliant, and you are capable. And that's the most important thing that I want my children, my students, to take away.
I love that. Tell the kids that they can do anything, and you're going to see them do remarkable things.
Yes.
So yes. It's amazing. I love that outlook. I love how you teach. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Infinite Abilities Podcast. I am your host, Nick Yerhart, and we are here to encourage each other to find our own unique abilities. Let's go. Hello, everyone. Today's guest is super incredible, and I can't wait for you to hear her story and what she does. Her name is Lois, and Lois, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I'm getting old now, so I have quite a long story. But my journey into this space really began when my second son went to school in 1994, and he failed. I knew that he wet his pants and he bit his fingernails. I didn't know the teacher shouted at him every day. I knew that he was staring into space, but the teacher told me that's all he does, is stare into space all day. And when that happens, the next thing that happens is there's a testing process. And the testing revealed that my son could read 10 words. He had no strengths and he has a low IQ. And the moment you're put into that basket of unable to do anything, that really drives a lot of instruction. I've got my phone dinging for some reason. And it's really challenging because you trust the school system.
Exactly.
And so that's what we did. But however, we're privileged, and my husband is a professor, and the following year he had study leave in Oxford, England. So it gives us a break from the school system. And we're Australian, so we're going from Australia to the UK for 6 months. And I decided I'm going to try and help Nicholas at home. I asked him if he wanted to go to schools there, and I just watched the blood drain from his face. And I thought, I can't do this. So I had this series of books called Success for All, words on a page, and he couldn't do it. You get to the end of the page, go back to the beginning, and there's nothing there, and there's nothing in his brain. And that was disastrous. And when my mother-in-law was with me and she was hearing me get frustrated, and poor little Nicholas' shoulders are just getting closer to his ears and he's just terrified of everything, she said, Lois, put away what's not working and make learning fun.
Yep. There you go.
And that caused me to really stop and think, what can the next step be? And I thought, I know he can rhyme words and I know he can see patterns. And with that, I started to write the simplest little poem ever with bugs, mug, lug, tug. I read it to him and he loved it. He loved it.
Awesome.
And he relaxed and he giggled, and then we made a picture of it, and it took hours. I mean, I'm telling you in minutes, it took hours to do all of this. But he loved it. And because one poem worked, you do another and another and another. And every day he's taking these baby steps to read these poems. One person spoke to me when I was in Oxford, and she gave me a series of books to help with the decoding. But I did the poetry first and then the decoding. And a lot of that was hands-on stuff, so we could work together to do it.
Yep.
And I keep writing these poems for him, and the poetry is exploding. And the double O's come up as in cook, look, and book.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote a poem about the last of the great explorers, Captain James Cook.
Mm-hmm.
And poetry is simple, very simple. Captain Cook had a notion there's a gap in the map in the great big ocean. He took a look without the help of any book, hoping to find a quiet little nook. And that's all it takes for them to start asking questions about what did Cook know when he left England? What's it like to sail across an ocean in unknown territory without a map, without a guide? And what's it like to then sail up the east coast of Australia? And he got into trouble because he didn't know the reef was there. Anyway, all of these questions asked. And then one day Nicholas said to me, can I see Captain Cook's original maps? And I stopped and I go, I can't answer. And he asked me twice before I was able to call up the British Museum and say, you know, they've got to be around somewhere, Captain Cook's maps. And they say, yes, we've got them. But he's 7, so he can't see the originals, but he can see photocopies, facsimiles. That works.
Yep.
While we're doing this, Nicholas then said to me, who came before Captain Cook? And I, smarty pants here, says, well, Nicholas, that was Christopher Columbus. And then he said, and who came before Columbus? And I am blown away because I knew that all of the questions he were asking did not come from a child with a low IQ.
Exactly.
And that was a critical point in seeing it's not a problem within the child. Yes, he's got language problems and he's struggling with this and this and this, but he can think. And that was a really critical component for me to see. We returned to Australia. I meet the diagnostician who'd done the testing, and I said, you know, we've just had this amazing time. He's doing really well, and I am just so proud of all that he's done. The lady stands in front of me, puts her hands on her hips and says, well, I've spoken with the reading teacher, and he's gone backwards. And in fact, he's the worst child I've seen in 20 years of teaching.
Wow. Yeah, you know, it's, you know, like you're saying, it's not the child, it's the education. Everybody learns differently. So as a teacher, sometimes you gotta figure out what works for certain children because they're not all the same. We all learn different, and you have to take different approaches with different children.
You have to take different approaches with different children. Brilliant. Because what happened next was really quite astounding. Nicholas came home with sentences to learn the sight words, you know, the words that are fairly abstract. And he came home with the word saw. And there were 2 sentences on the paper. And the first was, I saw a cat climb up a tree. And the second was, I saw a man rob a bank. And Nicholas stood in front of me with his little paper and he said, I saw a cat, and he stopped. And he went back and he says, I was a cat. No. And then he said, I as a cat, and I as a cat, and he just handed me the paper. He didn't even attempt the second sentence. And when I work with teachers, I say, what do you think is happening here? And too many teachers say to me, he's dyslexic. That's why he's not doing it. That's not the problem. The problem is that the teacher has provided the abstract meaning of the word saw. The word saw has at least 3 meanings. The first is the object, the physical object. The second is to cut. And the third is the past tense of the word to see. And the teacher has provided only the abstract. The child is thinking concretely. The child is cutting the cat in half. And he says, you don't do that. And it didn't make any sense to him.
Wow.
The other component is, you've got to ask, has he seen a cat climb up a tree? Because the teacher has used standard sentences for this child who has visited another country, and she couldn't say to him, what did you see when you were in the UK?
Mm-hmm.
When I went back to teaching, and I went back and I became a reading specialist and I had to do additional studies for that, the paper that stuck with me to this day was called Beyond the Deficit Theory by an Australian professor called Brian Camborne. And in it he said, the moment a child fails to learn to read, what do? We blame the child. We say they've got a low IQ, they've got dyslexia, they've got, look at their home background, look at this, look at why they're failing. Instead of, why do children fail? We give incomplete examples of how the written language works. What did the reading teacher do? And this is the other part that I've forgotten to say. The reading teacher was teaching my son one-on-one, 4 days a week, 30 minutes a day. And she couldn't standardise that sentence or did the teacher make a mistake? We fail to give children complete examples of how the written language works. That became the absolute foundation of how I work with students. When they do not get something, what is it that I'm doing that has stopped this child from recalling and from memory?
Wow. I wish more teachers took that approach, because the world would be a different place. It would. So you are remarkable. So I salute you for everything you've done, and you took the time to figure out, okay, what isn't working? What am I doing wrong? Not what is the child doing wrong, what am I doing wrong? How can I fix it?
Yeah.
You took responsibility.
Yes.
And that's huge. A lot of people don't like to take responsibility, but you took it into your own hands, and you learned what you needed to do to help your students, and that is just so remarkable.
Yeah.
Remarkable.
It changed my whole approach to how we teach reading, because we do standardise everything and we think we can just walk in and do X, Y, and Z. You can for many children. You can't for the children who are down in the lowest percentiles. And it takes us another, 5 or 6 years before we get the acceptable diagnosis that my son has a speech language impairment, or today they say developmental language disorder. And what I didn't know about my boy was that he has a genetic problem with his ears, and I knew he had ear infections from the ages of 8 to 18 months, and during that time he cannot hear accurately. It inputs the language and the brain learning. His strength is doing puzzles. His spatial awareness places him on the 99th percentile, because even though he has this problem with language, which he's not hearing, the rest of his brain is working really hard and most likely compensating.
Yeah.
So it's been an amazing journey, and because my son then went on to complete a PhD in applied mathematics from Oxford University.
Amazing. And if you want to bend it for him, to stick up for him, then who knows where he would be? Because
yes.
What I don't like is doctors. I'm not talking bad about the medical system, but doctors or experts, they give a diagnosis, and you have that label.
Yes.
And that label goes with you your whole life.
Yes.
And it's unfortunate, because that label is not you. You are not that label.
Yeah.
It's just a small little part of you,
Yeah.
and you have other abilities that are incredible.
Yeah.
So let's stop focusing on the label part of whatever.
Yeah.
And let's focus on the abilities that you do have.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I totally agree with you, and I often think about what would have happened if we'd not had that time in England, because
Yeah.
that was the time where, we could explore.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you what happened. Nicholas graduated, and after that I thought, I really don't know what happened in first grade.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, Nicholas, can you tell me what happened? My son, 30, confident, articulate, knowledgeable, sat in front of me and cried.
Wow.
He couldn't speak. And it was the first time that I recognized that the trauma had occurred in first grade and I had not helped him deal with it. And we as a family had not dealt with it. We'd ignored it.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I can't help with you. I can't help with that now. But Nicholas, what about when you and I learnt the following year? Mm-hmm. Now, instead of tears, we've got a smile.
Mm-hmm.
He named the poems that I wrote. He said, you wrote Windmill on a Hill and Mug of a Bug. Mm-hmm. And then he said, learning about Captain Cook taught me to love learning, and I never want to stop learning.
Mm-hmm. That's incredible. So incredible.
What we do with children when they are 6 and 7 years old influences their life enormously.
It does. It really does. And, you said that you had that conversation with your son when he was 30 years old. And as a coach, I've realized that a lot of the problems that people have as adults is due to a trauma that happened when they were younger, around that 6, 7, 8 years old. And it's once you can pinpoint that trauma, because you don't know, like as an adult, you may not know what that trauma was, and you don't even know how it's affecting your life still. So, as a coach, I dig in, I ask the right questions, and sometimes we can get to that trauma. And when they realize it, it's like a aha moment. It's like, holy crap, that's it. And people base a lot of their life on that one trauma, that one time in their life, and they carry it with them forever. And as a coach, it's really great to figure out what that trauma is, and then help them work through it.
Yes. Yes.
I don't like to say get over it, but you work through it. You learn how to cope, and you learn how to move on, and kind of leave it in the past.
My sister is a mental health coach and counsellor. And what she says is about trauma that's been left is that it sits in the brain, and if something will trigger it, and it takes you back right to that moment. Yet, when we shift that trauma to language, when we talk about it, we shift where it's stored in the brain.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And that's what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that helps us get through it. So when it is a trigger, it then isn't such a big trigger. You've had a way to work through it.
Exactly. Yep.
So,
exactly.
And, and now my son, he still has these extremes, the mathematics and the spatial awareness, which you don't see when you meet a person.
Mm-hmm. No.
You see how he speaks, and you see that you've asked him a question and he's withdrawn. Mm-hmm. And That's all you see. And then people can say quite rude things to him.
Yep.
Because all they've seen is he hasn't answered in the regular way.
Exactly. And, to go off of that, I experienced the same thing.
Yes.
I look different. My hands don't work like, let's say normal.
Yeah.
Which, whatever normal is. But, I walk different. I talk different. And because of that, people think that I'm not intelligent. And, a lot of people talk to me like I'm a little child.
Yes.
It's like, I'm 32 years old. My grade point average was probably higher than yours.
Yes.
So, but yeah, I totally get what you're saying. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
And, it's hard to deal with that. Like for me, like I struggled with that my whole life until about a year and a half ago. It's when I was finally like, who cares?
Yeah.
Like, I stopped caring about what other people might be thinking about me.
Yeah.
And, sometimes, honestly, when people like start to talk to me like I'm a little kid, I go with it. And I make a joke about it or something. Because like, whatever. You want to be like that? Well, okay. I can give it right back, So, yeah.
You have to deal with a lot more when you're different.
Exactly. Yep.
And it all takes up space in your brain.
It does. And I think what I do now is I don't allow it to take up space.
Yeah.
Like, people stare. I used to think about it for like hours. Like, I wonder what they were thinking.
Yeah.
And you start thinking like all these negative things that you think that they're thinking. But then it's like, more than likely, they're just looking at me going, huh, he's different.
Yeah.
But I'm over here thinking like, I'm not going to say what I used to think. It was not good. And not good to be on a podcast. But that was my mindset shift. Is I started thinking more positively and looking at the good in situations and just assuming the best. And that has been the biggest thing in my life that changed everything. Is instead of assuming the worst, I just assume the best. Because at the end of the day, that person staring at me, I probably won't ever see them again.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter.
Yep. Yep. That's all it can be. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wrote a book about our journey, and it's this reverse to memoir, and it really has a lot to do with what you just said, the way people see you, because, it starts off low. There's a problem in the beginning. Obviously, he fails first grade. Then we have the successes. Then we have the worst child I've seen in 20 years of teaching. Then it comes up and up and up and up again. And then we have good. Then we have another plummet. Something else goes wrong. Or someone else did exactly what they did to you. They make a judgment on the first 10 minutes or half an hour of meeting a child under a stressful situation.
Exactly.
And then again, they put him in a basket that says this child can't learn. Yep. And so, that's what I love the story that I have written, because it shows how we think and how our thoughts impact other children and children in school. And when I take on children, the thing I want to say to them is that you are a future rocket scientist, irrespective of how you come to me. I believe I can teach you to read, and you are brilliant, and you are capable. And that's the most important thing that I want my children, my students, to take away.
I love that. Like, tell the kids that they can do anything, and you're going to see them do remarkable things.
Yes.
So, it's amazing. I love I love that outlook. I love how you teach, and it's just like it's so different than mainstream, which is sad.
Yeah.
It's sad.
Yeah.
You know, like
and as you said, the cost of not teaching our children to read. The cost
exactly.
is a child who has a brain that is capable of being amongst the best in the world in mathematics.
Mm-hmm.
And we left that child to say, you can't do anything.
Yep.
Terrible. Terrible.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. In my opinion, I think you need to teach every teacher in the whole world. So let's get your message up there and get your book out there. So once again, what is the name of your book?
It's Reversed, a memoir.
Okay.
And it's my name underneath. Yeah.
Okay. And I will put the link to it in the notes, and I will be sharing it on my social media for you, because yes, everybody needs to read that.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Oh yeah, of course. So, my slogan, your abilities are infinite. What does that mean to you?
Just what I've been talking about here, that when someone struggles, we cannot take that first look or that first diagnosis and say, well, that's all you're capable of doing. It's about valuing that child for who they are and believing in them so that they can achieve whatever they like.
Exactly. I love that. Thank you so much. Do you have any last words of wisdom?
The quote that comes on my email is that learning problems dwell in activities and cultural practices and not in the heads of individuals.
Oh, yes. 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 Amazing. All right, Lois. This was really great. Thank you so much. This is going to be such a valuable episode for so many people. So, thank you.
Thank you for having me on the show, and I look forward to watching more episodes of yours.
If you enjoyed this show, please go ahead and share it on your Instagram story and tag me in the Nick Yerhart. Also, go ahead and share it anywhere else that you see fit, because the only way that I can grow this is by you guys sharing it. I don't sell anything on here. I don't have any sponsors, so let's just get it out there by word of mouth and help more people. Alright, everyone, remember, your abilities are infinite.